Alright, so today I'm going to be talking with you guys, my name is Schroeder, about what it means to find your voice. Both how I found my voice as a teacher, but also how I help my students find their voices. So I'm just going to preface this first. This is basically all inspired by my struggle with my confidence at the front of the room, and how I was really struggling to find how Miss Schroeder at the front of the room fit the Miss Schroeder with my students one-on-one. So at the beginning of the school year, my main focus was just, I want to know my students one-on-one. When I look back at my flip grids, there's like 4, where I just over and over say, I just really want to know them, I want to get to know them, I want to talk with them, I want to know who they are as individuals. And so that one-on-one connection was really a priority for me, just understanding who they are beyond just being a learner. And I was really surprised at how open they were with me right off the bat. The main way that I kind of journeyed into this is on the first day of school. I had them complete an assignment called a 6-word memoir. And a 6-word memoir is just what you think it is. It is just defining yourself in 6 words. And my students really ran with this. I made a whole big bulletin board of all of their different 6-word memoirs and just kind of put them up there to make that space their own. And they really did open up. I was blown away unexpectedly just how vulnerable they were with me right there off the bat. And I really wanted to validate that and appreciate that. So we moved even forward as they began opening up to me and just kind of having these conversations, making that a priority to talk with them one-on-one, talk with them, get to know who they were. I just wanted to see that even more so in their writing. So I tried really hard to implement quick writes as much as I could within the confinements of how many lesson plans I was allowed to do within the classroom. So I tried really, really hard to make that a priority, to give my students a space to have a voice, to speak, to think, to kind of have a place to really be themselves in a way that was meaningful and in writing. And it was amazing. They really did run with it. The journal entries that I read were so vulnerable and so real. But there was kind of a shift. After they closed those journals, the classroom kind of deflated and the vulnerability really stopped. So I wanted to ask myself, why? Why are they so open with me when it comes to their journals, but whenever we move into a classroom space and we're trying to discuss, why are they not vulnerable anymore? Why is it suddenly the shift towards what's the right or wrong answer? And I realized the problem, in at least some aspects, was me. The Miss Schroeder that I was whenever I talked to them one-on-one was really engaged. Let's talk, let's be real, let's just have a moment. And then the Miss Schroeder at the front of the room shifted gears, and suddenly we were in class time. There was a distance between who I was and suddenly the students. And I was trying to kind of unearth and reflect, why? Why was I doing this? Why was I shifting this gear? And that was because I was scared to have a two-way vulnerability, to kind of have them be vulnerable with me, but also I needed to be vulnerable with them. I needed to expose who I was, the struggles I was going through, what I was learning as I was going through this, because Lord knows I'm a learner still. I do not know everything. So that two-way vulnerability was so important to me to establish in my classroom. And I did some more reflecting, and I kind of figured out what it was that was hindering this vulnerability with my students. And it was comparison by and large. I was comparing myself to my peers in the way that they taught, the way they interacted. I was comparing myself to my mentor teacher, trying really hard to be her and the way that she did things. I was losing my authenticity with myself, and in that I was losing my ability to be vulnerable and real with my students. And like Cameron was saying earlier, they see right through that. They know right off the bat when you're not being genuine, when you're not being yourself with them. And it was unfair for me to ask them to be real with me if I wasn't being real with them. So the first moment after I kind of made that change and I was like, all right, I'm gonna really be vulnerable with them, was an assignment that I assigned to them to create a mask. And this mask all came back to Lord of the Flies. And I wanted them to think about kind of the selves of them that they showed to other people and the selves that they kind of hid and kept hidden. And it was an artistic project at first, and they really went with it. They really went really all out. I showed the kind of the most amazing examples here, but all of them were incredible. But then they wrote a reflective personal narrative on this. And I kind of gave them a chance to be really vulnerable. But before I did that, I shared with them myself, parts of me that were hidden, parts of me that I showed other people, and kind of that dichotomy between the two. And I just really saw how giving them that fodder of hey, I did this too. I did this assignment too, here's kind of me sharing that, just blew me out of the water how they ran with that. Once I kind of opened up those gates and said hey, I'm here too, I'm learning about myself, let's do this together, it was incredible to just see how they ran with that and created their own take on all of that and were really vulnerable with me in their writing. that was kind of earlier in the beginning of the year, and just recently I had them do a podcast that I recorded for my Digital Tools Send Me video. They were incredible. The first time I mentioned we're gonna do a podcast, the overwhelming reaction was, what's a podcast? I don't understand, I don't know how I'm gonna do this, just sheer panic throughout the room. And I just had to take a step back and be like, guys, when I first made my podcast, whenever I had to do this within my classes, I was terrified too. I had no idea how I was gonna do this. It seemed so daunting, I didn't know what I was doing, but we're gonna figure this out together. I learned how to do it, you can do it too. And just once I reframed and was vulnerable with them, with me trying to figure things out too that I'm still learning, they ran with it. Their podcasts were incredible. Once I kind of reframed it that it's not about a right or wrong way to make a podcast. Podcasts come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. There's all these different varieties. Once the shift was away from right or wrong answers, the doors just absolutely opened. And for me, just seeing that shift, that whenever I said like, I don't have all the right or wrong answers, I'm not this bank of all these things that you need to answer towards me, that's whenever I saw this biggest shift. So for me, learning about what I teach about, or what I think about teaching English, basically just need to know your students one-on-one, but you need to make sure that that moves forward from just those conversations. Those moves forward into how you're talking as a teacher in front of the classroom too. The classroom is a space for all of these things. So my goals is just to really make this even more so about my reading and writing life, about who I am as a reader and a writer, both my triumphs and my struggles, the things that I don't do so well, that I'm not super consistent with. I just want to be really open and have that two-way vulnerability so that whenever I'm asking my students to be real and vulnerable with me, I'm giving that back to them. At the end of the day, I just want to teach courage. I just want to teach courage to talk about the hard stuff, to talk about what's real, to talk about what makes us vulnerable and real people. And I just want that to be the basis of my teaching, and that's what I think teaching English is all about. Thank you.